Welcome back to Clue Me In, where we unravel the world's strangest mysteries, disappearances, unsolved crimes, and eerie cases that leave more questions than answers. I'm Liv.
I'm Kay.
And I'm Grace, ready to dissect the clues, ignore the obvious, and leap straight to the wildest theories.
Every episode, Kay and I break down a mystery, and Grace reacts, theorizes, and ultimately delivers her definitive answer.
And today, we're covering one of Europe's most bizarre historical mysteries, the case of Kaspar Hauser, a teenage boy who appeared out of nowhere in 1828 with a letter in a hand, barely able to walk or speak, and whose identity may still be unsolved to this day.
Ooh, so the original I have no memory and might be royalty guy.
Yeah, this case is pure Gothic mystery. Secret letters, locked rooms, attempted murders. It's basically a Victorian soap opera.
I love a good identity crisis with a dash of conspiracy. Let's get into it.
On May 26, 1828, a teenage boy appeared in the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. He could barely walk, barely talk, and clutched a letter addressed to the local military captain. The letter claimed the boy's name was Kaspar Hauser and that he had been raised in complete isolation.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he was wearing peasant clothes that looked like they were passed down through several generations of scarecrows.
Okay.
And he's holding a fancy handkerchief with the initials KH stitched into it.
Nice. So hand-me-downs, but a nice handkerchief.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And his movements were very awkward and clumsy, almost childlike. He didn't know where he was, couldn't answer simple questions, and could only say a few things. Liv, you want to give us some of his greatest hits?
Yes. So his three repeated phrases were, I want to be a cavalryman as my father was.
Okay.
Horse. Horse. And don't know.
Could you imagine just like seeing this teenage boy show up and just saying horse, horse?
Oh, so he also showed up with a letter, and it says that the letter says that he was given to a caretaker as a baby and that his father was a cavalryman. The letter also says, I myself am not his father. So very reassuring.
Yeah. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah. So authorities placed him with a local school teacher, and then that's when things started getting weird, as if they weren't already. So he was very, fascinated by mirrors. Like, he tried to grab at his reflection.
Oh, like he'd never seen them before?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I read some things about how, he even would, look at his hands. Like, it was the first time he was seeing his hands.
Whoa. Like, that's things that toddlers learn.
Yeah.
Or babies.
Weird.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah, he only wanted to eat bread and water. Although he did once try to eat a candle.
Wow. So when they say super isolation, they mean... complete isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so as he learned more language, Kaspar explained that he spent his entire childhood locked in a small, dark room where he couldn't stand up.
That is so sad.
Yeah.
So he just sat there?
Yeah, and he, never saw anyone's face, and a man would come feed him and teach him, a few phrases every now and then. And, one day, the man blindfolded him and led him into town and then just left him, which is all he can remember about his backstory.
And this is the caretaker that his dad left him with? We're assuming?
Yeah, that's the assumption.
Whoa.
Yeah, but despite it all, Kaspar adjusted really quickly. He showed real talent in drawing and music and actually became kind of a local celebrity.
Ooh.
But unfortunately, that didn't last very long.
Okay, why not?
So, one night, his caretaker found him bleeding from a head wound. So, Kaspar said that a masked man attacked him in the basement and then warned, you still have to die before you leave Nuremberg.
What? Just oh my gosh, this just keeps getting weirder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he recovered from it, but doubt started to kind of creep in, was somebody targeting him, or was Kaspar just kind of making this all up?
Yeah, and I feel like he was never, a factual storyteller, obviously, from the get-go.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but, get ready, because this is where it gets even more, weird and strange. So, a few months later, gunshots. Kaspar is found in his room with a wound to his head. And he claims he fell from a chair grabbed the pistol by accident and it just went off.
Okay. Likely story. Yeah.
So after this, his caretakers unsurprisingly started to question him, like calling him a liar even. But the real shock came in 1833.
All right, so on December 14th, Kaspar stumbles home from the park with a stab wound in his chest.
What the heck?
Yeah, so first gunshots, now stab wounds. He claimed a stranger lured him into the garden with a promise to reveal his mother's identity. When he got there, the man stabbed him and ran.
Okay. So he comes into this town with, like, amnesia, complete isolation, and, like, no social skills at all. Then gets, like, head wounds, and then gunshots, and now stabbing.
Yeah.
The poor guy just wanted to know who his mom was.
Right. So police went back and searched the park, and they found a note that was written in reverse, like a mirror note. And it said, "I come from the Bavarian border. I will even tell you the name. MLO."
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Very informative. So much to gain from that.
Well, and unfortunately, 3 days later, Kaspar died. He was only 21, and his tombstone read, "Here lies Kaspar Hauser, a riddle of his time. His birth was unknown, his death mysterious."
That was tragic and, like, just a short span of time.
Yeah, a lot happened to him in a very short time.
Yeah, definitely.
Poor guy.
All right, so let's go through some of the clues. So our first clue is the initial letter that he had that claimed he had been raised in total isolation by a mysterious man.
The second clue is that he had no basic knowledge of things like food, light, people, but he quickly picked up on language and concepts.
Okay.
And then he asked frequently to be a cavalryman, which is something that a child likely wouldn't fixate on unless it was, like, significant.
And if that's all he knew about his dad
Right.
and wanted to connect to him somehow.
Yeah. And then there was also the clue that, he was attacked multiple times, possibly by himself, but also possibly by other people.
Right.
And then his death came after claiming that he'd been stabbed by a man with information about his past.
And then something about his wound from that stabbing was that it was at an odd angle. Some doctors said that it could have been self-inflicted by the angle it was at.
I wonder, is he, like, making it all up?
I don't know. But he's still, like, even if he's making it up, it's still, like, where'd he come from?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's just weird. And then the other clue, the sealed note that was found in his possession after death, it was supposedly written by the killer, but it contained, like, odd grammar and phrases that matched kind of what Kaspar would say.
Yeah. And then the last one is just that DNA test in the 1990s and 2000s were inconclusive when they ran them.
Of the boy?
Yeah, so they couldn't figure out who he was.
Interesting. Well, there's probably no record of him.
Right.
What note was found? So the note found in the park, or when he died there was another note found?
The note in the park.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that was the wound that eventually killed him.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so here are the theories. There are some pretty fun ones.
Okay.
So the first is that he was the rightful Prince of Baden.
I love that one.
Yes.
So fun.
Tell me more.
So some people actually believe that Kaspar was switched at birth so that another child could inherit the throne.
That's still tragic, though.
It is, yeah.
I feel like his whole story will be.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Well, if he wasn't a prince, the other theory is that he was an imposter.
Okay.
Many think he faked his entire story for fame, using self-inflicted injuries and dramatic flair to keep attention.
Okay.
And then the one that was the first to cross my mind was that he was mentally ill. And
Yeah, I
the
most
thought of that as
logical.
well.
Yeah.
Especially
So,
with the gunshot incident.
right.
Just-
Dissociative disorders,
Yeah.
maybe, or like even trauma-based amnesia, something.
Yeah,
mentally.
he definitely has a lot of trauma being locked in a room, if that's the truth.
Right.
Well, then we go back to another kind of interesting theory, which is that he was a pawn. So others believe someone used him as a part of like a larger political or social scheme and then silenced him once his
But
time
what would
was
that
up.
be? I feel like we don't have enough evidence for that.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah,
like what
I don't
someone
know.
would gain out of his life.
I don't know, but also I haven't done deeper research into that specifically.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why that's actually a theory. That
Yeah, like
people
what was
have.
going on around
Right.
that time that
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
would have needed a pawn.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like it's a good theory, though.
And then the other one is that the attack was staged and then it went too far. So, like, the final stabbing may have been a self-inflicted wound, but then accidentally killed him, or, like, an elaborate fake that got out of hand, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final one is that he really truly did grow up in isolation. Some believe that his bizarre behavior, limited speech, and lack of basic knowledge were signs that he truly was hidden away from the world.
Yeah.
So, while those are all really good theories and stuff, we still just don't know. I mean, people don't know what really happened, who he really was, and it's all kind of left up in the air.
Yeah, now I get to solve it.
Exactly, yes. All right, Grace, you've heard the story.
The pieces are on the table.
So tell us, what's your theory?
What really happened?
I am definitely feeling like he grew up in isolation. Although I would love to think it was the prince switched up birth. I feel like it's not very likely. Well, it could be, actually. I don't know. But I'm going to go with he had some trauma.
Yeah, so, like, what's your theory about, like, the wounds being, like, possibly self-inflicted by the angle?
Oh, I feel like definitely. There's, like, yeah, I feel like he didn't have enough, like, good enough story or, like, any information at all.
Yeah.
And he never had any information about anything.
Yeah.
And, like, only knowing a few words when he came into
Right.
town. Like, that definitely shows something. So I feel like his story might not be fully accurate. Like, I think the mental disorders of some sort. But I think it's because he grew up in isolation.
All right, so you're saying that your final deduction is grew up in isolation and possible mental health disorders, which would
Yeah.
explain, like, the wounds and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if that's not it, it's definitely he was switched up birth and lost his heir to
I really
the
hope
throne.
it's that one, because that would be
I know,
very
I love that
interesting.
one.
Yeah.
It would be. But then that'd be sad because, like, of what he missed out on. But then so is isolation. So really, that's a lose-lose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope he was a prince.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Clue Me In. If you want to dive deeper into the mystery of Kaspar Hauser, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
Do you think Kaspar was royalty or just really good at storytelling? Let us know what side of the mystery you're on. You can find us on Instagram at cluemein_podcast.
And if you're falling off a chair, use your common sense and don't grab your pistol.
See you next time on
Clue Me In.